Nigerian economy suffers continued loss of big and small companies, mostly due to its volatile state. Recently, the Nigerian economy took another blow as South African retailer Pick n Pay announces exit from the market. The company's CEO, Sean Summers, stated that the company is leaving Nigeria as part of its broader strategy following economic challenges, currency volatility, and rising operational costs in Nigeria.
Now, multiple multinationals have left Nigeria by either scaling down operations, transferring ownership, or selling their stakes completely. Research shows that over 30 companies, including multinationals and local firms, have exited Nigeria since 2020. These exits have raised concerns about the business climate in the country and its ability to attract and retain foreign investment. Joining us is investment banker and public affairs analyst Nnaemeka Obiareri. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Again.
All right. I'm going to start with, asking about the reasons that, were stated by, some of these companies, the volatility of the Nigerian currency and, of course, its current economic state. Are these big enough reasons to exit or at least downscale the presence of some of these multinationals in Nigeria? Or are they really just being impatient?
The reason they cited is very big enough for them to exit. There is no business in Nigeria or anywhere in the whole world, no honest businessman or entrepreneurship can thrive under the atmosphere of price and forex instability and volatility. Number two, if you look at the Nigerian market, it used to be a market that houses very big consumer market, a consumer market with our size and population and everything, that any person that is involved in the fast consumer goods market will quickly want to play in. But of course, based on the economic climate and conditions, even the purchasing power of the average Nigerians has atrociously tanked in such a way that even those who have the goods or whoever even managed to stay afloat will not have the right amount of customers or number of customers to patronize them. There was a time in this country when we had a middle class population of over 4 million. Middle class population that decently earned between $110,000 to $170,000 per annum, and who could afford to purchase brand new things and all the rest of them. So the reasons that they cited, beyond just price instability, forex instability, beyond the lower purchasing power of the average Nigerian, which has hampered consumption, there is also the issue of insecurity, the issue of financial and power deficit. Of course, you've seen over the last 1 year, we've had over 12 national grid failures and all the rest of them. The cost of production in Nigeria alone is outrageous. I was discussing with somebody this morning. I said, logistics cost in Nigeria alone is one of the reasons why we have the kind of atrocious price instability that we have in Nigeria. I run one of the biggest agro outfits in the southeast of Nigeria. We are into all agro value chain production. And I'll give you an example. To produce a bag of 50 kg of rice in our mill at an average cost of 75,000 naira, but by the time you move it to the market, logistic cost takes it to almost about 110,000 naira per 50 kg bag. This is not supposed to be so. And that is why we are where we are today. So basically, it's actually going to pour. It's just started drizzling because there is nothing within the horizon that shows that those in power across the 3 tiers of government are doing anything to mitigate the reasons why these companies left Nigeria. Nigeria is a place that ticks the right boxes for any investor to play in. If we have the right political, governance, physical, security, conducive environment to enable them thrive. Look at those that have left, Michelin, Dunlop. You ask yourself, what are the raw materials that are used to produce some of the goods that they produce here? They are all 99% in abundance in Nigeria. Do we have the market to consume what they produce? Yes. Why did they leave? The same issue. No investor plans credibly how to invest and how to expect a return when you are not even certain of the variables of production, the factors of production. No, but if you watch the Nigerian market over the last how many years, you will discover clearly that most companies suffered losses, not because they lost money in operation. They suffered losses because of the forex instability. Take, for instance, Nestle. Take, for instance, PZ. If you look at PZ, it's a conglomerate, a multinational. If you look at PZ operation across the world, Nigeria is the only place where PZ actually had real EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation allowance of over 33%. In other countries, about 17%. But they got wiped out because of the forex instability, because of the devaluation of the naira. Over a period of 1 year, they lost practically everything they made, including the shareholders fund, and they exited. No country, no investment, no honest investor who is not into any shady business will thrive in an environment with so much uncertainty, with so much instability as we have it in Nigeria. So it's so unfortunate. Can we remedy the situation? Yes, we can remedy it. But are those in authority willing and ready to remedy the situation? The answer is emphatically zero.
Okay, so we're going to come to, I think that might be the next angle to look at, the steps that are being taken or must be taken to remedy the situation. Would it be a sensible argument to say that these companies, the PZs, the Diageos, the Microsoft, everyone, who have left, are simply being impatient and they would regret it, very, very shortly, because the vice president has been in a few countries, the president as well, selling, Nigeria as an investment environment and trying to get more companies and more countries to invest in Nigeria, because, of the investment climate here. And so are these companies being impatient, and will they regret it in the next, very short while?
These companies are not being impatient, and they are not going to regret anything, because there is nothing in the horizon that shows clearly that those who purport to govern us understand the enormity of the challenges that stare us in the face. It's quite unfortunate that rather than put in place policies and measures to bring in and retain those who are already here, we are busy wasting taxpayers' money, flying around and jockeying all over the world looking for investments. I'll give you another example. Gino Food. Gino Food is a multinational worth over $2 billion. Gino saw the great opportunities here in Nigeria, and they went across all the tomato value chain production. They went to Kebbi State, set up massive tomato processing factory. Gino Food even went into backward integration, commissioned farmers to do tens of thousands of hectares of land, of tomato farm gates. Everything was looking well. Gino invested tens of millions of dollars and had plans of expanding the investment to about $200 million. One night, bandits invaded their center. They were very lucky to extract their expatriates. Gino had cut their outlook on Nigeria, and they have put a stop on that backward integration. This is what the vice president and those in Abuja should be tackling. Insecurity, they don't even care about it. I'll give you another example. Cosmos Maduka Charis went to Anambra State to build a massive rice milling plant. Rice milling plant that had capacity of about 40,000 tons per annum. Today, that factory is producing at way below capacity. It's not even meeting, it's not even getting raw materials, paddy rice materials, to be able to meet up 30% of their milling capacity. In a country where we have governance that works across all the 3 tiers of government, the local government chairman, the governor of Anambra State, and government of Anambra State, what they would have done was to put in place missions, community diaspora, private-public partnership framework to create 4,000 hectares of paddy rice farm within the localities where that mill operates, to provide him with paddy rice, to enable him meal rice that will be very, very affordable for those within that community. I am sure nobody is thinking about it. Look around you. The power infrastructure in Nigeria is not working. Egypt, over a period of 7 years, ramped up over 25,000 megawatts of power generation. Egypt practically has 100% electricity cover. The whole of Egypt. Egypt has a massive landmass like Nigeria. Egypt has 100 million people. We have been battling with power grid failures every year. Same story. Common sense is common sense that we have been operating a system that does not work. Government come, government go. They've never thought it wise for us to unbundle the power architecture of Nigeria in such a way we will do away with this national grid thing and allow for regional and state grids so that people can actually produce and distribute within their locality without putting things on the national grid. Nobody's thinking about it. I give you another example. The cost of logistics. 80% of mode of transport is marine. The other day in Imo State, the governor of Imo State gathered people, all manner of people, 2 years ago that they wanted to dredge Atlantic all the way to Orashi. A project that will have cost normally under $156 million because I am privileged to have served in a private committee that had a plan to dredge to do that small channel because I was practically one of the very, very leading private sector people that contemplated it. Nobody in the Southeast among the governors or those who gathered to clap for what was put in place to enhance movement of goods into the Southeast of Nigeria, to move a container from Lagos State to any part of the Southeast today, it's about 2.5 million. That project would have been abandoned under a mission, community, private-public partner arrangement that will benefit everybody. Nobody is thinking about how do we dredge all the way from Escarborough to Jeba to create waterways. Nobody is thinking the most lucrative rail routes in Nigeria that has been already studied, 200 million tons of cargo traffic per annum, 500 million passenger traffic per decade, about $2.3 billion annually in revenue that can easily be done under the same private-public partner arrangement under a DBOT of 45 years. The Lagos, Shagamu, Ijebu-Ode, Ore, Benin, Onitsha, Asaba, Onitsha, Owerri, Port Harcourt, circle back Aba, Umuahia, Okigwe, Enugu, back to Abakaliki and Ebonyi State, back to Onitsha to Asaba. A rail route that will take about $5.2 billion to do. We can easily generate the funding to do it. The governors within these contiguous areas are not bothered about how they can create such infrastructure. We lose about 3.5 trillion naira worth of our agro commodities to post-harvest losses. Yeah. None of the governors or the local government chairmen are thinking about how we can produce storage facilities and how we can produce about 25,000 logistics trucks, chiller trucks to stop this. Nobody is thinking about anything to enhance productivity. You saw the other day, they gathered, 19 governors are opposing the new VAT regime that we put in place. All they are after is how they can collect, share, and loot. Nobody cares about how do we even enhance productivity. Bring food to the table before we talk about sharing.
Mr. Obiareri, if we take a look at the tax reforms, there seems to be some freelance, if you put it that way, or some opportunity given to new companies that are coming on board. Take, for instance, 4 years of no taxation, especially if you're coming into the country to engage in businesses. Also, small and medium businesses are equally being looked after to enjoy these taxes, free taxes. Don't you think this would in any way help to recondition and restation the country and get us back on track, especially economically, if we look at it that way?
I agree totally with you. I have taken time to go through that document, and I can bet my fingers that 90% of those who oppose that document have never gone through it. It's just a bandwagon effect. The only thing that they saw there was, the VAT waterfall that was supposed to be based on derivatives. So those of them who are destroying their environment, who are wrecking it, who will not provide a conducive environment for enterprises to set up for consumption to happen within their localities, are only afterward they will get. I have taken that. If you look at, and let me just dissect two major inputs in that document. One was the Nigeria Revenue Service establishment bill there, which will have helped us to streamline revenue collection in Nigeria and remove the multiple taxations. We know that there is so much corruption with the very multiple layers of MPS collecting different revenues, from MPA to NIMASA to the Customs and Excise Department. These are centers of wicked corruption. By this, if these guys have sat down to look at this bill, they will have seen clearly that basically what we have done was to streamline this thing, I give you an example. In 2002, Nigeria had over $62 billion import. Of the customs will have generated nothing less than $10 billion. But they did only about $2 billion, which simply means over $8 billion was stolen. But if with the right arrangement as have been put in place under this bill, customs will be restricted to just doing their border post of check-in and check-out. And then when you do this, you will not see them again in the hinterland creating nuisance all over the place. The same thing with the VAT regime. If the VAT regime is derivative-based, people will now be forced to make their environment conducive. I'll give you an example. Go to Kano. His is busy destroying everything that has to do with alcohol consumption and beverages, destroying shops. But the same Hisba, the same Kano, that have created the physical environment that will not allow people to set up business, start business in their environment, want to collect the highest tax on beverage consumption of alcohol because of the kind of what Babila physical federalism that will run. What I expected these 19 governors and the rest of them opposing this thing to do is to sit down, look at that document. Any reasonable patriotic Nigerian or governor or local government chairman or senator should be thinking, what do I do to enhance productivity, to create a conducive environment for the existing businesses to come to my state to establish so that I can enjoy the benefits of the new tax regime? No, they are not thinking about it. Go to the US and see the kind of fiscal regime they have there, the kind of federalism they run. Go to United Arab Emirates. You will see clearly, if California is putting in place laws that will not support enterprise, people are moving from California to Florida. People are moving to Texas. Over time, the inhabitants of California will be forced to take out Newsom to allow somebody that can enable them get the environment that will allow productivity, allow companies to stay. The same thing with United Arab Emirates. UAE is practically a 99% Muslim country, indigenous people. I traveled to Dubai one day. How do they discourage people from drinking alcohol? They don't go burning businesses, destroying it. I checked into a hotel. I opened my hotel chiller. I saw a tot of alcohol, $70. I just did a mental calculation. I said, wow, what did they do? They used taxes to discourage people. But if you decide to drink, you will pay and government will make money out of it.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Obiareri.
Reasonable government in Nigeria productivity. We had a physical regime, a cultural regime, a waterfall arrangement between 1960 to 1966. I expect these 19 governors of the North and those in the South to think about how we can rejig and totally overhaul the cultural and physical framework of Nigeria back to what we had in 1960 to 1966 to enable the constituent units to look inward and be productive.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Obiareri, I want us to then, focus a little bit more, like you've just mentioned now, ways that with which we can be productive. So what are steps that you would have recommended? There's people, if you mention the electricity, for example, and, the fact that we're still producing very, very minimal level of electricity for Nigeria, and of course, that cannot help us be productive. Many people would argue that Nigeria cannot even afford to spend $3 billion or $5 billion or $10 billion to revive its power sector. So what would you recommend that the current administration does if it hopes to, at the end of the next 4 years and maybe 5 years, set Nigeria at a place where multinationals are thriving to some extent here in the country, and of course more of them are running to Nigeria to invest?
Okay, the power sector should be further unbundled. The national grid should be unbundled so we can have regional grid and state grid. Very, very important. And if you look at what are the sources of energy power generation in Nigeria, the cheapest source of power generation, we have the thermal, which is powered by gas, and we have gas in abundance. What are we doing to generate gas resources to produce more gas and to be able to create more thermal generation centers to produce power? The hydro power is also very, very critical. Nigeria has a lot of waterways and that can be utilized. Coal, we have over $365 billion worth of coal in under our soil. What are we doing to utilize that? In the US, they still generate massive power using coal. In China, 40% of the industrial complex is powered by coal. What are we doing? Adding more subnational units. The governor should be thinking. We have massive proposals on what can be done across that value chain. If they are listening, we will help them. On the agro value chain, there's nothing that stopped us from having 8,809 agro-industrial clusters across the 8,809 electoral wards in Nigeria. Massive agro-industrial clusters within rural and sub-rural areas. Nothing stops us from creating. The current security architecture of Nigeria is not working. Chino will not go back to Kebbi State again or any of the northwestern states because of banditry and all manner of militancy. You saw the news the other day about a new group that came up. They are able to come up because the national security architecture is not working. Common sense is common sense. Between 1960 and 1960, we had a 100% security cover over Nigeria. Why? Because the regions control their own security. And we can replicate the same thing. Yeah. We want to implore the Bola Tinubu government to do something about security. And how do they do it? Every electoral ward should be allowed to have, every electoral ward should be allowed to nominate 100 of their sons who are honest, who are good, under what we call the agro rangers. Train them and put them under the control of National Security Advisor and the governors of each of the state. We will have 8,889,000 new agro rangers. Train them. After training them, provide them with AK-47, provide them with drone, post them back to man the agro-industrial clusters. In every local government area, put 4 armored carriers and the 3 truck-mounted machine guns. Put this, let me tell you what will happen.
Yeah. So instead of Mr. Obiareri, instead of, so we don't go into the little details here and there. I'm sure there's people who would also counter, with the agro rangers idea, and say that, we maybe should just invest more in our current security architecture, instead of, agriculture more.
Our current security architecture is flawed. See,
here's what I'm asking. This is what I'm trying to get. The key points that we should focus on, all right? If you say security, okay, power, infrastructure. The current administration is going to be 2 years old in a bit. The only major significant things that we can point to are the ending of petrol subsidy and, of course, the Naira unification when they came into office, the student loans as well. And just to mention, the president did sign an electricity bill in 2023 that enabled states, I believe, to be able to generate their own power. And if they're still not doing that, then, they have their own reasons. But what would be the key points to focus on? That the current administration should have said to themselves that we have no other things that we want to do, but want to ensure that these key 4, 5, 6 things are fixed in the next 4 years. If we have to take loans, we'll take loans. If we have to, create new bills in the National Assembly or new laws, we'll do it. But these 4, 5, 6 maybe key things must be fixed if we want to, see any headway.
Insecurity, we need to tackle the insecurity in Nigeria. We need to totally dismantle the current architecture that we're running and go back to what works for us. And we know the truth. Even the current governor of Zamfara State stated it, that if we have the political will, that we can destroy the bandits in 2 weeks. And I agree with him because we've done the numbers, we've looked at the security is indigenous. We must have to make it, hand over security back to the people. Lawful terror, unlawful terror, lawful terror, it has unlawful terror. Number 2, we need to build up our power infrastructure. There's no rocket science about power generation and distribution. The states should also look inward and try to create captive power generation and distribution clusters within their domain under a PPP framework. That must be done. Power. Then issue of transmission and logistics and storage and creating agro clusters must be done. Let me tell you, with an investment of $15 billion under this agro cluster arrangement, we will generate about $109 billion annually from that sector alone. These 3 critical areas, in terms of transport infrastructure, I'm giving you an example of a rail route that can be done easily within the next 5 years that will cost us $5.2 billion. We don't even need to wait for the federal government. The governors within these contiguous states can easily champion it. We already have the framework, the template, the document. If they call upon us, we will hand it over to them. What will be done, how it can be done, when it can be done, the partners and the parties that will be to it, and how the funding can be raised. Very easy peasy. But the truth is, on Saturday, You know, we come on online every time, and I must commend you guys on News Central, because we've always been on hitting on news services. Yeah, I wish these guys will sit down and think about how do we do this things. And there's no big rocket science about it. Nigeria has an infrastructure development master plan that clearly says that we will have to have over $2 trillion investment over the next 30 years to bring Nigeria to the level of second world economy. That simply means $100 billion investment annually. This investment cannot come through physical revenue. We can easily raise this money through diaspora Nigerians. Then we need to put in place the conducive environment to attract that capital. And like I said, insecurity must be tackled. Infrastructure, power infrastructure must be fixed. The issue of logistics and transportation must also be fixed. And then again, the most important, which I think is even important for them, massive electoral reform. Massive electoral reform that will give people confidence. Someone, those states today will be inaugurating the election and operate and succeed under such level of electoral banditry. Never.
All right, Mr. Obiareri, let's look at the fact, I mean, all of this can also be looked into, especially in comparison to our debt profile. We've talked about borrowing, we've talked about fixing the economy, and don't forget that this present administration has said that there is no money, okay, and that Nigeria is broke. We've heard that many times. I mean, aside from the fact that there was a recent statement that 5 billion was used to fix the vice president's house in Lagos. But as of September 2023, the debt profile of Nigeria grew from 87.9 trillion naira to 87.3 trillion naira to 87.9 trillion naira, which means that in the past few months, this current administration has borrowed at least 600 billion naira. So far, so good. The impact, we've not really seen it that much. How do you think the international community, who are equally following up with these stories, we did see one that came from New York, articles from the international community where they talked about the hazardous nature of doing business in Nigeria. How do you think the international community would be more than willing to come back and invest in Nigeria when our debt profile is rising, and not forgetting to their stories of others who are leaving? How do we manage this ego or this particular situation we find ourselves in?
Leveraging and borrowing in itself is not a bad thing. The question you should ask yourself, what are you borrowing to fund? Most of the funds that we have borrowed over the last 9 years, we have borrowed and freighted away. The external debt profile grew from $10 billion to $42 billion under Buhari. What did they do with the dollar borrowing? They created 23 trillion naira by way of means, printed $65 billion equivalent of naira, and they practically looted everything. There is no asset tied to it. I give you an example. If you're borrowing to enhance infrastructure and it's tied to projects that will be able to repay itself, we won't be into the kind of problem we have today. The world is not against us borrowing. We are against borrowing to loot. I give an example. To do clusters, agro clusters across Nigeria will take about $15 billion, $6 million per cluster. Each cluster will be able to generate about $42 million annually under a mission, community, private, public partnership arrangement. If we put in place the structures, the dynamic structures, the transparent structures, Akiwumi Additional and the rest of them will fund it directly. And if you put in $15 billion in that sector to attract $109 billion annually, it's a good investment. I give you an example again, the railroad I mentioned. We've done the numbers. It will take $5.2 billion to do. If you borrow, of course, it will come by way of $1.2 billion, $1.3 billion equity contribution. We've done the numbers. We put the structures in place, and the rest will come by borrowing, 25-year borrowing. That loan will be repaid under 7 years under a design, build, operate, and transfer arrangement. If we are borrowing $5 billion under such arrangement, is worthwhile. Let me tell you, Nigeria can actually attract capital investment of nothing less than $100 billion. From the diaspora say, look, we can get about $30 billion annually. But the problem is not the borrowing. The problem is that most of the borrowings are being done to loot 23 trillion. And it breaks my heart can't. We live in a kind of environment where people are so irresponsible, where people are so unaccountable. They just go out there, borrow money, put it upon the unborn generation, and nobody asks question. Like if you look at America, the debt to GDP of America is even more than their GDP. Their debt profile more than their GDP. Go to Japan. But the problem is that they are not borrowing to consume. You can see clearly. Egypt borrowed. You can see clearly where Egypt put their money. Nigeria will borrow, you don't see where the money is. And that is irresponsible. Borrowing is good, leveraging is good. Leveraging financing can only be beneficial if we specifically tie it to projects that can catalyze production. And that is what we encourage them to do.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think everybody will agree with that. There's nothing wrong with borrowing, but Nigeria continues to, increase its debt profile without necessarily pointing to anything, that we've achieved with all that money. I really want Nigerians to have some hope in the current administration, and be able to point out some things that we'll be able to achieve in the next 4 years. If they don't get re-elected in 2027, there has to be something that we can say, well, we've achieved, or at least they've set us on the path, towards, something. And if we have to borrow to do that, then at least the government should be able to point to the positive aspects of that borrowing. If we're borrowing $5 billion from the World Bank, from the African Development Bank, because we want to, fix some level of infrastructure. We want to fix power. We want to fix, tackle insecurity. There has to be something that we are borrowing for. Just before we let you go, quickly, share your thoughts on the controversy concerning Dangote Refinery. Ipman, they eventually got to some agreement yesterday. And of course, the price of petrol. We still are likely going to be buying petrol for above 1,000 naira, maybe 1,200 naira at some point. And many, many Nigerians are having to deal with that reality. So quickly share your thoughts on where we are currently with the whole petroleum sector and Dangote Refinery.
Before I answer the Dangote question, let me go back to history. A time was in this country when we were practically importing all the fruit juice that we are drinking. 5 Alive was being imported by Coca-Cola. Until the Lebanese, the Asians came in and set up Chivita, the Chi factory. They started producing Chi production at a cheaper price than 5 Alive and even better quality. Nigerians abandoned 5 Alive and started patronizing Chi because they had most of their raw materials from Benue State and the rest of Nigeria. Coca-Cola was practically forced to buy 55% of Chi for over $50 million. If Dangote Refinery is producing white petroleum products at a cheaper price, and which is supposed to be so, than any imported products into Nigeria, nobody will be talking about, products are being imported, importation should be discouraged and everything. And if you look at it competitively, based on the numbers, Dangote should actually be selling cheaper than imported products. If imported products are coming in cheaper, then there's something wrong with what they are doing. It's a problem we have with cement production. 99% of raw materials required to produce cement is in Nigeria. Yet the cost of cement in Nigeria is higher than the cost of cement comparatively in even other West African countries. Why is this so? The cement manufacturers in Nigeria is the only place where you have earning before interest and tax and depreciation allowance of 58%. Other global cement manufacturers, like the Sino Group, that is 10 times bigger than anything you have in Nigeria, have their EBT that between 70 to 25%. So the question is, all this rigmarole, all this issue let us face facts. I so much believe in transparent and open and accountable competition. If we are doing the right things, if we have the right one, there's nobody who is refining at the mega level that that should be selling more expensive petroleum products than the imported ones. And allowing the window to be open, we enhance checks and balances. There was when Yar'Adua was alive, one thing Yar'Adua did to checkmate them was that Yar'Adua also opened the window for cement importation. So that if at any point in time those local manufacturers started misbehaving, they can flood the market and bring them to do the right things. When there is no transparency, when there is no open competition, when there is no free entry and exit, monopolies or oligopolies will play games, and we should not allow that to happen in Nigeria. Whatever the arrangement or agreement they've had with Ipman, it is very, very good. But in the long run, we have a structure, an arrangement that will make petroleum products sell for less than 600 naira for 1 liter, whether it is aviation fuel, whether it's PMS, whether it is gas oil in Nigeria. If this government is a listening government, we will help them to put in place that structure. But that structure will require transparency. That structure will require accountability. That structure will eliminate the rent-seeking and criminality in the oil and gas sector. Are they ready for it?
All right. Anyway, I think we've spoken well on this particular topic. Hopefully, we'll get to see if a few more companies would stay in Nigeria and not leave. Thank you for your time, Mr. Nnaemeka.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.